Welcome to this program. This is a New York City Jericho presents Honoring the People's Veterans. Um, and we'll be talking about the medical assassination of our political prisoners. So, my name is Jorge Chang. I am with New York City Jericho as well as National Jericho. Um, we do political prisoner support work, have been doing so for the last 25 years or so. And so this is something that we are passionate about, and we want our political prisoners free. Obviously today is Veterans Day, and we are here to celebrate our veterans, the people's veterans, our freedom fighters, our political prisoners, and our political prisoners of war. So these folks are our heroes and heroes who stood up and fought for our freedom, for their people, for their civil and human rights, for their land against state injustices, against systematic racism, and against genocide. So we're here to talk about the medical health situations and conditions they face in prison, and how the state harms our political prisoners through medical neglect, misdiagnoses, inaction, and in some cases, flat out denying compassionate release. But before we get into the main program, we would be remiss if we don't talk about what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening to uh, our comrades in Palestine. So I'm going to read a quick solidarity statement from Jericho. Um, so concerning the atrocities and ongoing genocide in Palestine, the National Jericho Movement to free all political prisoners stands in solidarity with the people of Palestine in the fight against the apartheid state of Israel. Jericho affirms and supports the right of the Palestinian people to resist the apartheid government of Israel that has historically sought to annihilate them. The Palestinian people are supported under international law and, more importantly, under divine scripture to fight for and defend their human rights. International law maintains the right of self-defense for people under colonial and foreign domination and subjugation. So enough is enough. Free all Palestinian political prisoners. Free all U.S. held political prisoners. And I just want to say that the Jericho movement stands firmly in solidarity with the people of Palestine against dehumanizing oppression and genocide. So that being said, I know that many of the folks on this presentation here would agree that we need a ceasefire and we need a free Palestinian people. So that being said, we're going to move right into the program. As I mentioned, there's a focus around medical conditions of our political prisoners. One of the political prisoners, or the four political prisoners that we're going to focus on this evening, are Mumia Abu-Jamal, Leonard Peltier, Kamau Sadiki, and Ed Poindexter. Not, we have a lot of PPs, and they're all, in varying, uh, uh, um, varying health situations. But these are some of the folks that we have the greatest need to support, as their health is in in severely poor shape. So the first um, group of folks we want to invite to talk about Mumia are Ramona, Janine, Janet, and Eddie Africa, part of the MOVE organization. They are warriors, former political prisoners, and survivors of Philly police brutal attacks. So I give the floor to them, and they can provide us an update on what's going on with Mia and what we can do to help his situation.
On the move. On the move. Yeah, on the move. This is Janine, Africa Minister of Education for the MOVE organization. And we want to talk about our brother Mumia Abu-Jamal. We fought, y'all fought to get him off death row, but what I'm saying is he's still on death row. 2015, Mumia started showing severe signs of hepatitis C, and they waited until he started getting sclerosis of the liver before they gave him any kind of medical treatment. And it was deliberate. The people had to fight to get him that medicine for hepatitis C, but they waited as long as they could until this man's liver just started shutting down. And we're saying this is an indication of what this government always does to people they feel like are strong examples, influences, and that had the nerve, the determination to stand up against them. Mumia, when he got off of death row and was being transferred to SCI Montanoy, they did an examination of Mumia. And when they did his examination, the medical department said he was in good health, which was a lie. At 2015, Mumia was in severe stages of hepatitis C. And they knew this, but what they wanted to do was just gloss over it, hold him in the prison, and hope that they would get away with killing him with hepatitis C. The symptoms got so severe that his legs, his whole body looked like he had been burnt from the liver condition that started coming from the hepatitis C. When they went to transfer him down to the courthouse for his hearings, Mumia could not tolerate it. They wanted to put leg irons on him. And when they put the leg irons on him, it looked like it was cutting into his skin. And it was so painful, he could not take it. This is what they've been doing to this man. They want to kill him. It's no point in mincing words. And the way that they're doing it is through the medical department. And it is medical assassination. And they're doing it that way because when people listen to doctors, people trust doctors. They don't question doctors. And so it doesn't look like that this system is still murdering Mumia. It looks like, well, he got sick. Well, it's not true. This is just one of the tactics now that they use, this government use, now that they have people in prison because they can't come at them with bullets, with guns, with blackjacks anymore because they're being watched. So they're doing it in a very devious, slow way, slowly killing our former soldiers, revolutionaries in these prisons. And we want people to realize the severity of this situation. Get Mumia off of death row. On the move, long live John Africa.
Long live John Africa.
This is Ramona Africa, Minister of Communication for the MOVE organization and a longtime supporter of our brother Mumia Abu-Jamal. I just want to point out, first of all, that the trial judge admitted, he said he's going to help them fry the nigger. Now, his stenographer told us, put that out because she was so horrified. Now, Mumia, we got him off the death row. Like my sister said, a life sentence without parole is a death sentence. And we're not going to sit back and have them murder our brother, Mumia Abu-Jamal. We have to contact any and all those that have the authority to release Mumia, to, find the release, find the way to get him released. That includes DA Larry Krasner, because he does have the authority to release Mumia. He released, like 15 or so prisoners. He did that, but not Mumia. He wouldn't dare release Mumia. And I don't know why. He knows Mumia is innocent. There are witnesses that came forward and say that they have been intimidated by the cops, told they had to testify a certain way. And, the government knows that, the trial judge knows that, the district attorney knows that. So you could see this is a blatant conspiracy against Mumia. Like my sister said, they want to kill Mumia through medical neglect. That's assassinating Mumia through medical neglect. And we're not going to sit by and let that happen. We want people, to keep fighting for Mumia. And like I said, the way you fight, people want to know what they can do for Mumia. Go to authorities, confront those in authority that have the authority to get Mumia released. On the move, long live John Africa.
Long live John.
Long live John Africa.
On the move, Janet Africa.
On the move.
People have been fighting hard and long for Mumia, and we don't want people to make the mistake of giving up that fight. We stayed in prison for 41 years. They told us that we would never get out of jail, but people kept on fighting for us, kept on with that determination, and that's what people have to do now. Do never, never give up on this fight with Mumia, even though it's been a long time and people maybe can't see anything happening. But remember, Mumia was on death row. He's not on death row. People work to get him to where he's at now, and we have to work and fight to get Mumia free, and he can be free, just like the Move 9 got free. All right, everybody, let's do our work and bring Mumia home. Long live John Africa.
Long live John Africa.
On the move. My name is Edward Africa, Minister of Defense for the MOVE organization. I want to talk about my brother Delbert Africa. He went to jail along with the rest of us with his help. Once he got in there, they began to work to try to destroy himself like they did anybody else who came in there and was speaking out against them. Now, what they do, they give you, they tell you have a problem, but the medication they give you don't do nothing. It's generic. It's just something to make it appear like they're doing something right. But now, slowly and surely, they just destroyed Delbert's health. But he was strong, and so he still came out. But now, by the time he came out, his health was bad. And the doctors out here didn't understand why it was done, because it wasn't the right thing to do. So now our brother Del passed on. Now the people who are responsible are those medical people in these different prisons. They've been killing men and women who are outspoken since there have been prisons. So now it's time for people to say enough, because it's going to be your family members, my family members, and they don't care. So it's up to us to make them do the right thing. On the move. Long live John Africa.
On the move.
On the move. We want to give people Larry Krasner's address and phone number so that those that want to can call and put that pressure on him, flood his office with calls about Mumia, because there is no way that 15 people that put in petitions, the same petitions as Mumia, all got released except Mumia. So what is Krasner, this government, saying? That everybody had a merit to get released except Mumia? 15 people at the same time, and he dismissed their charges and freed them, everybody except Mumia. And he has to explain that. So for those who want to do it, his address is
3 South Penn Square, Philadelphia, PA 19107. And his phone number is 215-686-8000. So flood him with, information about releasing Mumia. We can do that. We got him off death row. I mean, he's still on death row for real. A life sentence without the possibility of parole, that's a death sentence. So we got to free Mumia, bring him home.
Free them all.
on the move. Free them all.
Free them all.
Free them all.
Dr. Alvarez,
There we go. So let me begin by saying thank you, Janine, Janet, Mona, Eddie, Rhea, for the invitation to come, have a chance to just, from a perspective as a medical consultant to Mumia's case, to just acknowledge that when we speak about harms done, this is not in the theoretical. when we examine the hepatitis C case, what we see within the prison system is their own creation of standards that are so far from the proper medical standards, knowing that the person who is suffering from this condition will come to a place of harm and cirrhosis, violating principles of medicine that invoke us to do no harm and to apply judiciously the medicines around us in service of his healing. And it was through documentation of colleagues within the medical system, Dr. Truskin, a world-renowned hepatologist, who broke that down basically to say, and the court acknowledged, harm's done. The justifications they used for denying this medication included a concern and fear around the cost of Mumia's case, setting a precedent that says, no, you don't just get to wait for them to practically die before we give the medications. And that's one of the aspects of Mumia's case that has a ripple effect across the care of all of our prisoners. And what I want to share with you as well is that there's important work. I don't know if Dr. McIntosh is on this conference call, but he's doing some very important work that's examining a very interesting niche, which is examining the rates of cancers in those who are openly identified as political prisoners. That's important because we have to examine and respect that a healthful perspective of being a prisoner in this country is one in relationship to state violence. And when I say this, I'm not saying something that's like theoretical again. The American Public Health Association has come out and said that.
Right.
We're at the stage now where the medical profession, this is where engaging in a healthy relationship with diverse disciplines, and this is the key that I believe will be the way in which we can emerge from a declaration of elder abuse, literally from the professional mandates of social workers, as well as clergy, as well as teachers, as well as physicians, and as well as mental health providers. We recognize that that is an area where we need to come together. Mumia said yesterday, and Jaleel, who's been very generous with his time and counsel regarding a narrative of elder abuse and professional responsibility, has said, let's do it tomorrow. And finding a way where we can come together across disciplines is an aspect of doing abolition work that is long overdue. We recognize there's a lot of trauma and abolition work. It's important that we really stay grounded and focused and in alignment so we free our elders. State violence is the primary social determinant of Mumia's health. Even if he had perfect care, state violence is why he's there. That's what's recognized from a public health perspective. That's what creates opportunity for us to engage our public health departments as well as our district attorneys around a narrative of elder abuse. I'm deeply grateful for the time you've allowed, and there's so much wisdom, collective wisdom in this call, and I'm available if there's any questions as well.
Great.
Love, not fear. Free them all.
On the move. Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Move Organization.
Yes.
Well, yeah, absolutely powerful information that, and yes, we do need to make those calls. We need to write to Krasner to put some real pressure for him to act and do the right thing. So I believe the phone number was put up there on the chat, and
Yes.
and I'm not sure if the address was as well, but if not, but let's make sure that that gets shared to everybody on this presentation. So moving on, we're from Mumia, we're going to be going right into Leonard Peltier, our Native American political prisoner for the last 47 years now, I believe, and we have Dan Battaglia, who's with the official ad hoc committee, to tell us about Leonard and the health struggles that he's dealing with at this time.
Thanks, Brother Jorge. Hi, everyone. I want to thank you all for attending today. And I want to thank all the brothers and sisters, comrades on this call for supporting Leonard for all these years. I'll tell you something, Leonard feels it. I was back down to see him in May, a lot of you know, and he feels it. And I have to tell you, and I'm sure everyone on this call, excuse me, may be able to relate to this, but I do not know how Leonard maintains the sense of humor he has and the sanity that he has after the hell that they put our political prisoners through. It's just shameful, but he still maintains that wonderful, beautiful sense of
Hi,
humor.
Dan,
Uh,
your audio is cutting in and out.
Oh boy. How can you hear me now? Can everybody hear me now? Are we good?
We can hear you.
That sounds clear.
Sounds clear? Okay, great, thanks. But it's just shameful, the abuse and the just absolute horrific and neglect that they have put on our brothers and sisters, while they're inside. It's just horrible. So we need to address that. But right now we're dealing with Leonard Peltier. Leonard just recently turned 79 years old, and the medical conditions that he's facing now include diabetes, hypertension. He's partially blind from a stroke in one eye. He has an abdominal aortic aneurysm. He tested positive for COVID in January of 2022, but beat it. And perhaps one of the most alarming things is that he has not seen a dentist in over 10 years.
Ooh.
When Leonard and I visit and we eat, he has to eat everything with a spoon, because he cannot. He has a problem chewing, because of the dental issue that I just brought up. And right now we're working to remedy that. But it's absolutely imperative for us to really put pressure on the authorities and the powers that be to really address these issues and force them to give our comrades the treatment that they have not received and still do not receive. So one thing I'd like to do is put out the website for the ad hoc committee. It is www.freeleonardpeltiernow.org. And up there, you can find a host of resources to learn more about Leonard's case, different letters of support, and different initiatives that we're doing and hosting so that you can be a part of it. But just to talk a little bit about Leonard's case, one thing up there that you will see is the letter from the head of the United States Prosecution Office, James Reynolds, who was, thank you very much, Ann, by the way, for putting up the website. James Reynolds' office handled the prosecution of Leonard Peltier in 1977, and he has come out publicly not only advocating Leonard, but that Leonard was not proven guilty of any kind of crime that they could prove in court. Interestingly enough, just to backtrack, when Leonard was indicted for the murder of the two FBI agents on Pine Ridge in South Dakota, he was indicted with Bob Robidoux and Dino Butler. And in case you didn't know, Leonard fled to Canada for fear that he would not receive a fair trial. And Bob and Dino were apprehended before he was. And the trial judge, Edward McManus, who presided over their trial in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, felt it wouldn't be fair to have Dino and Bob wait while they tried to extradite Leonard from Canada, because even if they were going to extradite him, there'd be an appeal, et cetera, et cetera. And the original theory was that Dino, Bob, and Leonard aided and abetted in the murders of the agents. And of course, Dino and Bob were found not guilty by reason of self-defense. One of the primary points of evidence that surely helped them was how the defense attorneys were able to present the sheer climate of fear and terror that pervaded the Pine Ridge Reservation from even before the Wounded Knee siege in 1973, when Wounded Knee was liberated, up to and after the agents were murdered on June 26, 1975. And something that I want to note is we have proof from Dwayne Brewer, who's one of the Goon Squad leaders, and Paul Berg, who was an impartial observer who lived on Pine Ridge Reservation, that the FBI was working clearly and complicitly with a death squad. More than they say that there was 60 some natives that were killed during that period. As an historian of the topic, I must tell you it's probably closer to over 100 that went uninvestigated. And the United States Commission on Civil Rights came out and observed in the aftermath of the investigation after the agents were killed, and observed the terror that the FBI put on the local population, warrantless searches. Their presence was deeply resented. So things like that, and the FBI was never ever prosecuted for that. And no one from the FBI has ever served a day in jail, despite the absolute torture that they inflicted upon the Pine Ridge people. And that being said, Also, something that I'd like to note is once Leonard did go to trial in 1977, the constitutional violations in his case are absolutely staggering. For example, he sat in judgment with a jury that had a racist juror on it and a judge who was also found to be racist post-conviction. Also, we should note that they changed their theory on Leonard Peltier's participation in this trial. For example, they actually attributed him to killing the agents in cold blood. And then, of course, it was proven not only upon appeal, but Lynn Crooks, the prosecuting attorney, also has admitted in numerous television interviews that they did not prove that Leonard killed anyone. Mm-hmm. And yes, Ann Lamb also brings up the fact that Joe Stunt's Killsright was also killed that day, and there's never been an investigation into who killed him. And what's really staggering about this whole thing is that they keep changing their mind, they keep changing their theory, and Leonard still languishes behind bars 47 years now. This coming February is going to be 48 years. A lot of the time that he has spent in solitary confinement, and something that we've been going through a lot as those of us who can visit with Leonard Peltier. Coleman locks down at the drop of a hat, and I've visited with Leonard 3 times. Half of the times that I was going to go see Leonard have been canceled because of these lockdowns. And he's in USP Coleman 1, which is in Florida. It's about an hour or so north of Tampa. And in those summertime, it's just really hot. It's brutally hot. And to not be able to leave your cell for 24 hours straight, weeks on end, at his age, it's just torture. They're just torturing him, And speaking of torture, it should be noted that the key witnesses in Leonard Peltier's trial were tortured. Mm-hmm. Mike Anderson was subject to sleep deprivation. Angie Long Visitor was put in jail for months on end. Murdo Pourbaix was subject to torture. And of course, Murdo Pourbaix is the infamous witness that never even knew Leonard Peltier, who was supposed to be the eyewitness to a crime that Leonard never committed, that she'd never seen and was not even present for. So in any event, these Leonard's medical conditions that Leonard Peltier is still struggling with are exacerbated during lockdowns like this. And at 79 years old, he can't take much more of this anymore. It's torture. It's torture. We have to bring him home. We have to bring all our brothers and sisters home. We have to free them all. We have to free the land.
Yeah.
So also, if you could just take some time out and write Leonard a letter, he's going to genuinely appreciate that. Because I'll tell you, it's supporters like everyone on this call, everyone worldwide that always throws their love to Leonard. I mean, it's things like that really keep him going. Because again, and Ann and you and I had a couple of conversations on the phone this week. When we go visit our comrades, it's a miracle that they're all still sane when they're subject to this type of torture. I mean, can you imagine at his age, Leonard Peltier has not seen a dentist in over 10 years.
Ridiculous.
It's torturous. It's torturous. He had major heart surgery a couple years ago. He almost died. So it's a wonder that he's still alive, thank God. But we got to bring them all home.
Yep.
So, but again, everyone, thanks so much for your support. And remember to go and put the link to our website in the chat, freeleonardpeltiernow.org, so you can keep in touch with everything that's going on. We have a great toy drive that Leonard loves to do every year for Christmas, the children on Pine Ridge. It's a wonderful success. So definitely go and check that out. And if you can contribute, that would be great. If you could look out for the cookout, you're going to make a lot of children very happy this holiday season.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. We really appreciate you joining the call and giving us an update and letting us know what we can do further to support Leonard. So moving on, we're gonna switch over to talking about Kamau Sadiki, former Panther. And we had reached out to his daughter Kasise to help to do a presentation, but she's not feeling well. So we have Bro Shep, also a Panther, and currently with the international campaign to free Kamau Sadiki. He's worked on other freedom campaigns for say Kuodinga, Mercer Marine Shows, and many others. But now the focus is on Kamau. So Brother Shep, we'll let you take the mic.
If you're talking, Brother Shep, we're not hearing you.
You gotta
Hear me
unmute.
now?
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody muted me. It wasn't me. Peace, everyone. All power to the people. Again, this is Brother Shep, and veteran of the original Black Panther Party, and currently working with the Safra Bakari Albert Noah Washington Foundation to support the families, campaigns, medical issues, and projects of our captured freedom fighters. We're currently working on 2 projects. Right now, with Prison Lives Matter to liberate our elders, and of course, what we're here to talk about today, the international campaign to free Kamau Sadiki. I'd like to start out just basically for people who are not familiar with Kamau, just a quick, brief, chronological review of Kamau for folks that don't know him and not familiar with his case. Kamau was born in New York in 1953 and raised in New York City. Spent some time in Rochester also. But he joined the Black Panther Party when he was 17 years old in 1968 with the Jamaica Queens branch. He worked with the party from that time up until 1971, when due to government counterintelligence programs and other factors, the Black Panther Party basically went to a split. And a lot of our comrades were forced to go underground, including Kamau. So he operated serving the people in that capacity until 1974, when he was captured as a POW, and he spent 5 years in prison as a prisoner of war. In 1979, he was released, and he spent the next 23 years with his family, raising 2 daughters, and working for the phone company, and basically was a stand-up pillar of the community that he worked in. Then in 2001, when the 9/11 attacks came, this government decided that it was going to try to clean up all the old cold cases from back in the Black Liberation Movement. So they went with this whole war on terror and Homeland Security, the Patriot Act, and all those other things. And they, of course, targeted our freedom fighters in that movement. Kamau was one of the first victims of that effort to capture our freedom fighters. So he was arrested in 2002 on some fake charges, and as he was held, asked to try to trap Asada Shakur, who was the mother of one of his daughters, Kakuya, and this, of course, he refused to do that. The trial continued, and he was convicted and sentenced to life plus 10 years in prison. Just folks to know, in 2007, they tried to do the same thing with another group of veteran Panthers and activists from back in that day with another 71 cold case with the San Francisco 8 trials. All of those brothers were acquitted and freed and not, charged with those cold cases. So that said, I just want to get into now the whole issue that we're here to talk about, medical neglect. Kamau currently is dealing with hepatitis C, cirrhosis of the liver, sarcoidosis. I hope I'm saying that right. Dr. Alvarez could probably correct me on that. And he's been forced many times to self-medicate himself due to a severe wound infection that he has in his leg. We've actually had to fight to keep this hospital from, if you want to call it a hospital, from amputating his leg on a number of occasions because they refused to treat him. Kamau, of course, like many of our freedom fighters, contracted COVID-19. During that time, there was no hospital staff to assist him in that. And I have to mention that the name of that hospital is the Augusta State Medical Hospital Prison. It's an infamous death house. And we're going to be actually dealing next year with really exposing that prison and how they've been killing inmates there or killing our captives there, and particularly our elders. Kamau will be 71 years old on February 19th, coming up. He needs to come home. We need to get the treatment that he deserves to have. And our campaign is currently working real hard on 3 different areas to get him home. Again, 71 years old. The system will tell you all the time, oh, they're still a threat to society, and they might try to escape if they're released. It's all a bunch of bull. So we want to try to deal with the campaign. I think you got the information up there, and if you didn't put it up there yet, how people can get involved. But just to sum up, Kamau doesn't have an assigned physician. Like I said, he mostly has to provide his own medical care and care for his own deteriorating health. And his current condition exemplifies the fiscal and public health failures of mass incarceration, the cruel, negligent, and racist practices of continued incarceration during the COVID that I mentioned, and even now demonstrates a deep disrespect for our elders and harm to already traumatized communities. I just want to end by saying we need people to get involved. We meet every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We have committees that deal with all the different issues, and definitely with the health issue. And we like people to join us in that. And even now today, with the recent situation going on in Palestine, this government has not only just responded by supporting them with bombs and money, but they're also moving on our captive freedom fighters in that area too. Right now, we're having problems getting in touch with Imam Jamil Al-Amin because he's a Muslim. Fortunately, they haven't done that to Kamau, who's also a Muslim, but we need to be vigilant, and we need to talk to them, write to them when we can, visit, and get involved in these campaigns. Free them all.
Free them all. Thanks, bro, Shep.
Yes,
Yeah.
and all that information is in the chat. So Valerie was putting it all in there. So it's all in there. People should make sure they write to Kamau. If you want to get involved in the Monday night meetings, all of that is in the chat.
Thanks, Sam. I would definitely encourage anyone who has some time, who cares about these issues to get involved. It's that's the only way that things are going to happen. Without our support, it's going to be tougher and tougher to get them out. The one last person that we're going to focus on in this medical neglect discussion is Ed Poindexter. He was part of the Nebraska 2. It was him and Mondo Wilango. Mondo passed away a couple of years ago. And joining us to talk about Ed's health situation is going to be Tekla Johnson, a longtime supporter of the Nebraska 2. Go ahead, Tekla.
Greetings and peace. Greetings and peace. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I want to thank you, first of all, for inviting me to share. I'm speaking, I guess, in a sense, in the place of Adrian Payne and Ricky Payne, Ed's sister and niece, and I'd hope that they would be here tonight. I'm also formerly of the National Jericho movement, and I feel a comrade of both the national organization and the chapters, and acting secretary currently of the Black Power Archive Collective. And I would like to say that I'd like to jump into his health first and the current situation, and then if we can go back to his case if time permits, just to make sure that we have time. So Ed is 79 years old as of this month. He's been in prison for 53 years. Former member or deputy chairman of the Nebraska chapter of the Black Panther Party, who trained under Pete O'Neill of Des Moines, Iowa. He has been on kidney dialysis for the past several years, first 6 days a week, and he got too sick, and so they cut back to 5 days per week because he vomits after each one. He has sight that's nearly gone, completely gone in one eye, nearly gone in the other eye. He cannot hear without a hearing aid and didn't have any this past spring when folks went to visit him and couldn't hear the visitors. He has had a heart triple bypass heart surgery in 2016. He has had his leg amputated this spring without his medical parole person being notified, just completely gone there and been surprised to see that his leg was amputated, for which he said it was his fault because he wasn't able to change his socks. So whoever is telling him that, we recently, thank you to the New York Jericho and the Detroit Jericho and Jericho in general, did a call-in campaign from June, July, and August when we found out all of this was going on. And they did an assessment, someone in the reception and treatment center where he is, because he's been moved there from the prison proper, did an assessment and said that he cannot sit up for more than 10 seconds. He can turn over in bed, but he can't get himself out of bed. He cannot go to the bathroom. He cannot change himself. You know, it's really tragic when you think about it. So we were able to go and find an attorney who had worked with him previously, who was willing to try to help get him medical parole. And we found out in September that actually finally got a copy of the parole eligibility law for medical parole. And this was current as of January 26, 2023 of this year. And what it said was that the body that has the sole discretion over medical parole is actually the parole board and not the pardons board, who's been blocking him for years, blocking him from even having a full parole hearing. And when he did have one back in 1994, and they decided to commute his sentence, the pardons board blocked it. So again, this is a sole body. We also found out that people kept saying that no, he's not eligible because he has had life term. We actually found out that the only people who are not eligible for medical parole are those who are sentenced to death or who are sentenced to life without a chance of parole. And he was in prison before that kind of sentence even came about. So that means, and so we also looked at his intake prison record, and he has been eligible for parole since 2 years after he was incarcerated. And this information has been not shared with his attorneys or whatever the case. And also the requirement is that you be incapacitated, which he obviously is. So we were very excited. We thought we had momentum. And then the state seemingly, threw up a wall again, which is they now have Nebraska Attorney General Mike Hilligers has now published an opinion, which the state is acting on, that the Ombudsman's office is unconstitutional, which was the eyes and the ears of the people. Mind you, because of all the lockdowns and all of these things that the increased fascism since COVID, they only have visiting hours Wednesday mornings for a couple of hours. So family can't always get in there. Now the Ombudsman's office is locked out. They're locked out of the information system, which they used to be able to check on their health, used to be able to check on their case and their status. We don't know what's going on with him since September for sure. His lawyer is working with the family and they're still trying, but as I say, it would seem that there's an expansion of the fascist state. There's lockdowns constantly, and again, we would say ceasefire, on all fronts. We don't know if it's going to take an uprising of the people, if we can do something like the UAW did and do lightning strikes around various prisons, but what it's going to take to get our folks home. And I will stop there, but if we have time and people want to know more about the case, I can go back into it.
I definitely think you should share some more about the case. I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, so Ed was born in 1944. He went to high school in Nebraska. He went to the Army during Vietnam. He came out, worked in drug and anti-drug efforts with the YMCA. After 3 or 4, there were several, but after we think 3 police killings in Omaha, he joined the Black Panther Party. He became as I said, he went to get, they had an instance of it that formed, and it was closed down when all the chapters were sort of told to close down by National, but so they re-emerged as a the National Committee to Combat Fascism. Who was going to become his co-defendant, Mondo Wilanga and him both trained in Iowa. They also were under, in terms of an umbrella, under Chicago, under Fred Hampton, and the whole structure, the Chicago structure, which by then was also had long been under attack, but they were still sort of under Chicago, regionally speaking. They had police patrols, a breakfast program. They had a Vivian Strong Liberation School. I'll tell you in a second why they named it that. They sold the newspaper. They had PE classes. He had an alibi. He was with somebody who his wife at the time. No one questioned his alibi. What ended up happening was that the police killings continued, and in 1969, a young girl named Vivian Strong was shot in the back of the head. 14 years old, she was shot, and I guess you would call it the openness in speaking about the pigs and so forth. That level of verbiage increased among, for the leadership. They said, we're going to off the pigs if they off us. And so these things were used at the trial because in the August of 1970, a empty house was blown up, and a police officer who had gone to inspect, there was a call to the house, and one police officer was killed. So both of these brothers, Mondo Wilanga and Ed Poindexter, had alibis. And so the state initially charged them with conspiracy to commit murder. During the course of the trial, they changed it to murder. And how they convicted them, by the way, we actually have the FBI files where FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover actually says, there's a young boy who they got to confess that he did it, and they told him to do it. But they later on, make a long story short, J. Edgar Hoover told the defense, told the prosecution, hide the audio tape of the 911 call from the defense because that's not a boy's voice on there. And so they knew that the boy perjured himself. Just to make sure, back in 1996, they went and found him. He was in witness protection up in Seattle, Washington, tested his, Tom Owens, a voice analysis expert, tested his voice, said this is not his voice. They know that the state knows that the key chief witness perjured himself, and they still kept the man in prison. Amnesty International said they need a new trial, and they still kept it. In 1990, they still kept the men in prison. 1993 and 1994, the Nebraska Parole Board said they need to have their sentence commuted to a certain number of years, or they need a new trial. Still kept them in prison. So we see the same thing that has happened everywhere around the country happen again. By the way, and just one interesting tidbit that probably won't surprise any of you, but the police had lied during the trial and said that they found dynamite in Mondo's house, and they said they found it in a coal bin and where it was. Well, actually, there was no such place in his house. And during the trial, he said that his defense said, wait a minute, that sketch can't be right because there is no such place like that in his basement. And his house burnt down during the course of the trial. So we see the state doing this. It's a pattern that's happening. It's a different story, but it's sort of the same story everywhere that we go. And first when I saw assassinate our folks in prison, I thought, dang, you don't want them to think of that, but of course they've been doing that. I mean, when I had to really think about it, they've been doing it the whole time. So
yeah, it's sadly the same story, just different folks, and throughout the U.S. Oh, thank you, thank you, Sister Tekla, and really appreciate you joining us and talking about Ed, and do let us know what else we can do to help support Ed's efforts to get out, whether it be a medical compassionate release or whatever it is. That let us know how we can support him.
I mean, right now I feel like, writing him directly would be good. Of course, you're going to have to write very, very large, and someone will have to read it to him, but he still will know he's getting letters, and he'll if he gets the volumes of letters, that would be good. Ed Poindexter, P.O. Box 2500, Lincoln, Nebraska 68542. But I do hope that what will come out of this meeting I know that Ann has been doing this and Jericho's been doing this for a long time, but that we actually do come up with some kind of, I don't know, direct action or some sort of strategy that I'm not sure how we win other than we don't quit. But beyond that, is there a way that we can, since we're few in number, and there are people on here who are more knowledgeable about how we might possibly do that. But right now, I guess there's a thing called the study of revolutions, where when people resist and they're oppressed, our oppression, then the oppression mounts. And then if we continue to resist, the oppression will mount, which is what I think we see in Nebraska and maybe everywhere. And I think if we just continue to resist, I mean, eventually we will win. Eventually we will win.
Let's do it. Well, thank you. We're gonna keep the program going. Next up, we have Ori Lumumba, who's with the New York City Friends of Move. He's been doing support work for many years, and he's gonna talk about the PPs that have passed shortly after their release. So again, these are situations where our political prisoners are released, but then they pass shortly thereafter, and mostly because of the fact that their health they're in such poor health, surviving through incarceration, and their health is so poor that they may get released through compassionate release, and they only have a short time out before they pass. So Ori, why don't you take the mic?
All right, on the move. How's everybody? You
All right.
hear me? All right, good to see everybody here. One of the things that when we proposed this to Ann and our brothers and sisters from Jericho, we want to talk about and continue to push the issue of medical as it relates to political prisoners. We've discovered a very disturbing pattern in the last 10 to 15 years, with this pattern where political prisoners are being released, but they're being released when they're at their deathbed. And it shouldn't have deteriorated. And the first point we want to make is there's no compassion behind compassionate release. Herman Wallace was forced to sit years in prison when he was innocent. Not only years in prison, but years, decades in solitary confinement, only to finally be given his freedom and released from prison, but to die 2 days later. Okay? Marilyn Buck, everyone who knew about Marilyn, her courageous fighting spirit, Marilyn Buck was released from prison on compassionate release, only to die a month later. And we've been getting these examples constantly. Recently, the most recent with our brother Ruchell McGee. After 63 years of confinement, he had to fight another means and towards a compassionate release to die 2 months later. Russell Maroon Schultz to die 4 to 5 weeks after being released, when in the courts, the Department of Corrections itself even said they cannot accommodate him medically, so they're going to have to release him. But the point is, these brothers and sisters should have been released years ago. But that's the pattern of this government, where when they finally releasing you, they're releasing you to die. And if people want to question that or don't take that in, accountability, you can look at the example with our brother, Dr. Mutulu Shakur, where several times Mutulu at deathbed, went to court to try to get compassionate release. And the judge said, you're not sick enough. Come back when you're sick enough. That's when we're going to release you. That's a disturbing pattern we see in here. Our brother, Robert Seth Hayes, first became eligible for parole in 1998. That's when he reached his minimum of 25 years. Seth wasn't released on parole till 20 years later, where his health completely deteriorated. And Ann is there. Ann will tell you, because my sister Ann was in that infirmary every week in Sullivan going to see our brother Seth. The issue with his diabetes, the issue with his Hep C, the issue with his heart troubles. When they finally released Seth, they did the medical. They knew he was at death's door. They said, ain't no more fight, ain't nothing left in him. Let's release him now. The same with Herman, the same with Maryland, the same with Maroon. We shouldn't have to go and dig as hard in the courts to have to say, okay, well, we'll be compassionate now. There's nothing compassionate about being innocent, being forced to be in prison when you innocent, being forced fed a diet of nothing but starch. Look like Brother Dan said about the situation with Leonard at his age, the multiple health problems Leonard had, and they not easing up. Or they gonna release Leonard when he's at death's door? Our brother Delbert, when he went to prison in 1978, he was healthy. Our brother came home, he had tubes in him. He had different things in him that they put in him. To find out that he was given all of the wrong medications when he was sick up there in the infirmary, not only given all of the wrong medications, but too much of the wrong everything. Where he had a good 6 months with his family and then we lost him. Or the same with Chuck, where they gave Chuck all the wrong chemotherapy up there and too much of the wrong chemotherapy. We had Chuck for a year. Maroon family had him for a couple of weeks. Matulu's family had him for 9, 6, 7, 9 months till he passed away. And this is the disturbing pattern that's going on. And I think we need to start a conversation and turn this conversation into action around the issue. Our sister, the late great Safia Bakari, she worked tirelessly with the Jericho movement as one of the founders, but also to push this Jericho medical project. My sister Ann is going to talk about the people that we lost in prison due to medical neglect. And we also lost people when they came home due to medical neglect. The same way we started a conversation and we turned it into action around the issue of parole and police unions, it's the same issue that we have to push with the medical. There was a brother named Muhammad Cody, one of the elderly prisoners in New York State. This brother spent decades in prison. Decades, only to be paroled from state prison, then sent to federal prison, and then paroled to die a month or two later. That's it. They're keeping our freedom fighters in these dungeons till they're aged, till they're not healthy no more. And as blunt as it be, people might not like what I'm saying, but they sending people home to have a couple of hours, couple of days, couple of weeks with their family just to wave by. And the government felt, well, hey, we did what we wanted. They don't have nothing left. That was our plan. Like, again, there's nothing compassionate about compassionate release because these savages, there ain't nothing compassionate about them. These are the same people that dropped the bomb on our family, the same people that's murdered our family of the MOVE organization, the same people that's murdering children in Palestine, the same officials that's out here murdering children in the streets through police terror, through drugs, through pollution, in your water, in your soil, in your food. So there's nothing compassionate about compassionate release because these people that send our freedom fighters to prison, they ain't compassionate. They straight savages. So hook up with us, hook up with the Jericho movement. People know Ann, they know me. People know Shep, they know Jorge Ben, the Leonard Peltier committee. We out here doing work and we asking people, get up with us. Let's start this conversation, but not just talk. Let's turn this into action to expose this issue of the medical neglect of our political prisoners. It's time. We don't want to just bring them home for a week or two, a month or 2 or 3 months. We want to bring them home, to enjoy their kids, their great grandkids, etc. And it may seem far-stretched, but it's not. We got serious work to do, y'all. I just want to end it there. Hook up with the Jericho movement. Y'all can post New York Jericho movement, the Jericho movement. Hook up with the Kamau Sadiki committee, the Leonard Peltier committee. Hook up with the MOVE family. We out here doing work, y'all. Free Mumia, free all political prisoners. On the move.
On the move.
Free them all.
Thanks, Ori. That is well said.
Ori.
On the move.
On the move. On the move.
Everybody on the move. Want to tell everybody on the move?
That's
On the
right.
move. On the move.
My one here, he acting
On the
shy.
move.
Oh, where's the little guy? Let's see him.
On the move.
Why everybody want to see you right quick.
I want to see the little warrior. All right.
Acting a little shy,
On the move.
Move, Amari.
Stay on the move, Mari.
On the move, Amari.
Move, Amari.
Never at a loss for words. On the move, y'all. Let's bring them home.
Yeah.
Right. Move.
Thanks, Tori. So the other part of talking about the PPs who've passed behind the walls is, sorry, the ones that have passed shortly after release, is the ones who passed behind the walls and didn't even taste the freedom. So Ann Lamb, who's with New York City Jericho and National Jericho, as well as the Leonard Peltier, Free Leonard Peltier,
New York City Free Peltier.
New York City Free Peltier. She's going to talk about our PPs who passed behind the walls.
All right, well, very hard to follow Ori since he already said most of what I would say. We have to always remember that this is all about revenge. You know, you dared to stand up to this system. You dared to take a stand. You dared to fight back. Therefore, you will be eternally, eternally punished, and your family will be too. I actually have some pictures. I don't have pictures of everyone, but I have pictures of most everyone. So I'm going to just show them to people. I would like everybody to turn on their microphones, and when I say the person's name, you say presente. Okay? Merle, Africa.
Presente.
Bill, Africa.
Presente.
Crazy Balagoon.
Presente.
Don't have pictures of Romaine Chip Fitzgerald.
Presente.
And William Lefty Gilday.
Presente.
Right. And Teddy Jahith, but I think I do have a picture of him. Anyway,
Okay.
Presente.
Yes. Eddie Hatcher.
Presente.
I'm Teddy, here he is. Teddy Jahith.
Presente.
Heard about this brother earlier. Mando Elanga.
Presente.
Abdul Majid.
Presente.
Tom Manning.
Presente.
Hugo Pinel.
Presente.
Unlike other people, Hugo Pinel did not die from medical neglect or medical assassination. He was murdered in the prison yard that was set up, assassination set up by the prison.
Right.
And Albert Noah Washington.
Presente.
And our dear brother, Richard Williams.
Presente.
So these are some veterans who have made the ultimate sacrifice. And we have to really pick up the work, as Safia would always say, and do everything we can to get everybody home as soon as possible. And let's not forget that we are soon going to have a whole other crop of political prisoners who are coming up. You know, you've got the people in Cobb City who are facing RICO charges. You're talking 10 to 15 years in prison if they get convicted of that ridiculous thing, you know. But, you know, we have to pay attention because, you know, a lot of people who are out protesting now and who will continue to be protesting against this government and what it's doing, not only here, but all over the world, you know, are going to get swept up into this prison system, which we know is horrible, horrible. Now, I know that Shep mentioned earlier about the Augusta State so-called medical prison. Go to Kamau's website and you will see a few years ago, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution
did a whole series of articles exposing the horrors of that place. And it is just horrible. You know, you have garbage right outside the OR. You've got, you know, roaches running all over the place. You've got bloody bandages on the floor. You've got doctors saying, I can count on the fingers of one hand. And on the other hand, how many people have been killed due to medical neglect and medical incompetence? So, you know, really check it out, because that is very, very serious. And I see that Brother Khalid said Alvin Adel Joyner of the Philly Five died in prison a few years ago. Thank you, Brother Khalid. That is very important. That was one of Maroon's co-defendants. So we will salute to him as well. Presente.
Presente.
So we just need to keep doing whatever we can at whatever level we can. Like Pam Africa said one time, if you can pick up a pen, pick up a pen. If you can make a phone call, make a phone call. If you can sign a petition, sign a petition. Everything is important. Nothing is not important. You know, you think like, oh, that's just a little thing. Write to the prisoners, please. Write to the prisoners. They love to get correspondence. And a lot of them will be very happy to write you back. In fact, you might establish a whole correspondence that you were never expecting to have. And, you know, our brothers and sisters behind the walls and those who have come home, like our comrades there, Janet and Janine and Ramona and Eddie, you know, they are some of the greatest people you would ever want to meet. And you can have like such a great experience meeting them. Like, you know, Dan mentioned it earlier. You know, how does Leonard maintain his great sense of humor? You know, you need that to survive, you know, and as regular visitor of many prisoners, you know, I can tell you, and I know that Paulette could also say this, as somebody who's constantly visiting prisoners, they are just some of the most amazing people you would ever want to meet. So I just say, what's the call? Freedom. So let's do it. Let's do it.
And I want to add something too, as a former political prisoner. That is another tactic that this system uses. They would withhold our mail.
Right.
They would withhold our mail and make us feel like nobody cares, nobody's thinking about us, nobody's writing us. And that is another tactic that goes tear down your mind, to make you feel hopeless. So people, when Ann says that people in prison would like to hear from you, is true. They need to know that they're not forgotten and that people have not just stopped, because I'm telling you, prison officials, this government thrives on that. They try to use that to get to us and those that's left in prison, to make you want to give up and just go ahead and sit down and accept being there and die. So it's not a small thing, people, to write people in prison. It's very encouraging and it's important.
And don't forget Lynn Stewart.
Yes.
Yes.
Presente.
Presente. You know, when they
Thank you, Paulette. Thank you.
And
I would like to add, Anne, if I may, this is an election year. Don't just write to the prisons, write to these goddamn Democrats.
The Democrats.
Hold them accountable. And you should also, is that the freeing of political prisoners is one of our reparation demands. And I see Brother Cam is on. I know he could comment on that. But hold these Democrats accountable. You got them by the balls. This Palestinian thing is blowing up in their face.
Yes, it is.
And you can use that leverage. Sit on your vote if your people can't get out of prison. They're dying, and they can release the Manson people, and they can't release them. They can release John Brinkley, and they can't release them. No, this is unacceptable. Sit on your vote. Tell them you're not going to vote for these goddamn Democrats. They don't start releasing Leonard, Mumia, and the rest of our political prisoners.
That's right.
That's right. Thank you, Sister Betty. And
thank you. This is a wonderful program. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that all of the speakers have been so tremendous. That's what's made it wonderful. But about Lynn, I think that when they did finally release Lynn on the second go round, right, they were not expecting Lynn to survive out here as long as she actually did. So even though we only had Lynn for a few years after that, we did have her for a few years, and she never stopped working for everybody else.
You got that right. She never did the perp walk.
No,
the other thing I want to say is it was the United movement that freed Lynn. It was a united movement that helped to free Lynn.
And that's what we need for everybody.
Send up your requests to the universe. Ralph is rather ill. He's fighting, but he's at Lenox Hill Hospital. Just send out some words of encouragement to the universe.
And one of another political prisoner that is Malmin Kabar. Malmin was released. He has COPD. He was not expected to survive a month. And he, like Lynn, has persevered and has lived over a year. Now, because of the medical neglect, his health is in poor shape, but he is holding on and everything. So, yes, they come home and they still have to then deal with the medical system out here.
Yeah, and then when they come home, they don't have any of that. They don't have Medicaid, they don't have Medicare, they don't have health care. When people were trying to take care of Matulu after he came home, they're still now, Matulu has already passed, but his campaign and his committee is still paying medical bills. It's amazing. They had to have something like $2,500 a month just in medical, costs. And, we see that, or people come home, but they don't come home with any kind of, guarantees for your medical or anything else. And, that's another thing that we need to think about and do and support people after they come home, not just while they're inside, but once they come home. What are your needs? How can we help? Do you need housing? Do you need to see your family? Does your family need to come to see you?
Right on.
To travel. All those things are very, very important. And that's one of the things that we as Jericho do try to do, and help the families, when they're inside so they can go and visit their loved one. And if their loved one is home, do you have to travel to see your loved one? Do you need, some money for that? Let us know. And we will definitely try to support in any way that we can.
Right. And Sekou now, like Ralph is also struggling health-wise. And there is, you can go on, I think it's his website and contribute to help. He is a long time, it's going to take him quite a while to be rehabilitated so that he'll be able to walk and use his arms again. So please check out these websites of the prisoners that are home that are struggling with health care.
Can I just intervene right quick? Not to change the subject, but when I saw Paulette, I just want to personally acknowledge Paulette. I think I started writing political prisoners at the age of 16. And I think I did my first visit at the age of 19. I got on the van 2:00 in the morning and went all the way to Lewisburg. Brother Jihad Abdul Muhammad. And it was my first time going into prison, not alone, but a federal prison like Lewisburg, which is one of the most scary things, having to go through yards, having to go through corridors. I was in that visiting room so nervous, waiting for my visit. And there was this woman there. She was just looking at me, smiling, sitting across. I'm like, why is this woman looking at me? Why so? And the woman said, you're here to see Jihad. And I said, wait, I said, you're Paulette, Safia's friend. Paulette, I was coming all the way down there. And she wanted to make it easy for me so I wasn't in the visiting room alone. And she went and pulled out another former political prisoner, Larry Giddens. And we was all in the visiting room together at that time. So I just want to give a testament to this sister. That's sorry to change this, but her work, I've known her for over 20 years, maybe close to 30. I mean, this sister had a day job teaching in the schools, but then worked at night in night schools just to make money in overtime to send prisoners money for the holidays. Going to visit prisoners on Thanksgiving, on Christmas. You know, I learned from her and Safia about helping the families of political prisoners. And I just want to take the time. I'm sorry to change the subject, but I just want to take the time just to acknowledge this sister.
Well, thank you.
I would like to add to that. She never missed the day when Ralph was on his vigil in front of Washington, D.C.
That's right.
Definitely. Like I said, it takes.
I would like to
takes
add
a
to that
village.
too.
Takes a village.
And I'd like to add to that too. It has been an honor and a privilege to work with Paulette and be her friend, in addition to being her comrade.
I'm adding to that too.
Respect to be her friend. Yeah. And I have been really honored to work with Paulette. She is like one of the most principled people you would ever want to meet. And not only was she teaching during the day, she would also bring former political prisoners to her classroom to speak to the students. So, you know, she was always doing the work, and she was always educating in addition to all the work that she did and still does. You know, Paulette is really an amazing and inspiring human being.
Thank you. But, you know, if it wasn't for the fact that these are not just comrades and they're not just prisoners behind the walls, but these are our friends. And of course, when most of them went down, we all had been doing anti-war work. We had been doing anti-imperialist work. We had been supporting the struggles of the people of Africa. And so we knew each other, and it was a commitment to never leave one behind. We could not. How could we say that we were a revolutionary and then forget the people behind the wall? So that's been my commitment. And of course, Bob Robidoux, who was Leonard's cousin and co-defendant, this would have been his birthday. Before he passed, he said, now, you know, no matter what happens, you have to keep fighting. We have to bring Leonard home. And I think Bob always felt guilty that he and Dino were found not guilty, and Leonard ended up with these 2 life sentences, which of course also shows the corruption in the judicial system, that 3 people charged with the same charges, 2 come home and 1 is there. And so we can never forget them. These are our warriors. We are in the People's Army. And, you know, the Marines say no one left behind. Well, we have to say the same thing. Not one of our prisoners can we leave behind or forget. So thank you for all the nice words. I really appreciate it. But meeting MOVE people when they come home, and when you get to meet somebody, you know, Larry Giddings has been very ill, but he's now moved to the East Coast. And so hopefully once they get settled, he'll be able to be on some of these Zoom calls with us. And that's another former political prisoner that has come home, and due to bad diet and everything inside, has had to have the valves in his heart replaced more than once. You know, and that's what caused Matulu to have that stroke. You know, they gave them peanut butter all the time in the lockdown, which is full of salt.
Right.
And Matulu had a stroke. They took him out, and within 3 days they brought him back. And if he hadn't trained other young prisoners how to do physical therapy and acupressure, he would have died, because they just brought him back and threw him in his cell. You know, and he was paralyzed and everything. So by them teaching people, being a teacher, they actually, these young men saved his life and helped him be able to walk and everything again. So yes, we have to remember our comrades inside, and no matter what, you know, we have to be committed to bringing them home. So it's wonderful to see everybody. I mean, we are family now. You
Right.
know, we have been through this together. I've known Leonard for over 50 years. So, you know, we all are family, and with Ralph being ill, he is our elder, and you know, we need to put up some smoke and some smudge and prayers, whatever people do to their own person, to try and get Ralph his cancer under control.
Well, right now we want him to, when he finishes the chemo, go to a rehabilitation center. So he's going to need exercise, and be nice if comrades encouraged him to move. So I'll keep the family informed.
Right, let us know where he's at. You know, people can go.
Yeah. Well, they can start
with
visiting him now in Lenox Hill Hospital on 77th and Lex in Manhattan. But the real challenge is, once, you know, American medicine finishes with you, is to survive American medicine.
Right.
So he will need to move to get all that poison chemo out of his body. So we're hoping the community will chip in and, you know, take turns having him walk.
We will do that.
All right.
Love.
All right. Thank you, you guys.
We'll acknowledge one more per. We gotta give a big shout out and on the move to our sister here, Ramona Africa. Still on the move and still out here.
Oh, free him. On the move.
Ramona.
Shout out to Jan Laman on the move.
All right.
On the move.
Yeah, we do have lots of comrades who have gotten out and who are continuing to do the work. And, you know, that's really, you know, fantastic and inspirational. You know, we have Jihad still doing work. We have Jalil still doing work. Herman Bell still doing work. You know, Larry Giddings still doing work.
Laura
Whitehorn has been amazing.
Right.
Linda Evans, you know, a lot of folk. Claude Marks, you know, people have been doing really fantastic work. And that is, and of course, the Move family has been doing fantastic work. So, you know, all of that is to be admired and also emulated.
Oh, yes, and someone said David Gilbert, and David now is in California with his grandson. So, and his son. So he is actually having some wonderful time being a grandfather, which for many years we never thought that would ever happen, and now he's there, you know, so that's great.
Yeah, it shows that it can happen.
We were in Puerto Rico, and all our Puerto Rican comrades, and Oscar and Delcia and Alicia and everybody, all the Puerto Ricans that are there working and continue to work for Puerto Rican independence. So that's, you know, the commitment is there. The commitment is there. We just have to, as Sophie would say, pick up the work.
Right. And also, Shep was putting in the chat there, and this is very important. We do have many more political prisoners than the ones that we spoke of immediately. That was more due to time constraints than anything else, because if we were going to talk about everybody, you know, we could be here for a couple of years, literally. But we do have other people with serious medical going on. Brother Shep mentioned Kwame Shakur, who is the co-founder of Prison Lives Matter. Kevin Rashid Johnson, they're fighting medical abuse. Also, Shaka Shakur, another one of our prisoners fighting medical abuse. Kojo Bomani is really, you know, having a really hard time trying to get some medical care. So that's just a few more. I'm sure there are many more that we need to really, you know, worry about and focus on. You know, and most of these people have been down like for a long, long time, as we started out by saying, you know, you're only allowed to come home when you're at death's door. It's absolutely unacceptable. So I'm going to turn this back over to Jorge to see if we have any Q&A or discussion that people want to do.
And I think I do want to add to what Ann was saying, which is that, you know, in terms of Jericho, we work on putting together these medical campaigns. And if anybody knows medical professionals who are willing to, volunteer their time to help, um, Alvarez, we need more of you, right? And so, um, there's a lot of work to be done, and and the more hands we have, the better. Um, and I do want to loop in Tag, who is part of the campaign to bring Mumia home, as well as the Spirit of Mandela initiative. Um, he's been doing work with both Jericho as well as the Spirit of Mandela and building this People Senate. So I do want to have him tell us about the work that is involved around the People Senate, what it is, and if people are interested, how they can get involved.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, so speaking of the familial question that was raised, which is so critically important, we were just out in Puerto Rico in September with Spirit of Mandela, with Jericho, as well as Occupied People's Forum. And one of the most crucial insights for me that we heard and that I certainly internalized from our comrades out in Puerto Rico was this question of embracing our political prisoners of war as a part of our community, as a part of the family. And that's what we see and acknowledge and recognize here in spaces such as this. But to be in a place like Puerto Rico, where that could be felt in such a concrete way, just out and about, not necessarily in an organizational setting, but just among the people, that was a great lesson to learn, and one that I will hold dear for quite a while from our comrades out in Puerto Rico. I'll say that likewise, as Brother Ori was mentioning, this question of visiting our political prisoners and prisoners of war has been so instrumental to my development as well, and I trust many of our development. I mean, I'm seeing heads on the screen right now, the Move sisters, for example, and as was mentioned, these are without fail, without question, the strongest individuals that you will meet, the most compassionate individuals that you'll meet are our political prisoners, are our prisoners of war. And it's just a known fact, and it's a fact that's known by any of us who've ever come into contact with them, as well as by these ghouls who are responsible for and hell-bent on keeping them captive for that exact same reason. And so we're talking right now about our people's veterans, and we recognize, and it is our task to make sure that those around us recognize that those are us, and those are the best representations of us. And so for us to move forward in any kind of logical way requires that first and foremost, we represent for our political prisoners of war. This is something that the Jericho movement has been very clear on. Everyone that has spoken tonight, and I see those that are here present on the Zoom. I can't see who all is on social media, but I know just from the names that I recognize, we're all clear on that. Political prisoners represent the best that we have to offer as a community, as a movement. With that said, and with that recognized, the People's Senate, which I'm tasked with raising here, the People's Senate moves with that recognition as well, and is moving from a place of our mutual recognition that not only do the political prisoners and our prisoners of war need to take the lead and need to be foregrounded with regard to our movement, but that also there's a broader issue of genocide that we're facing here in the US and its territories, or its alleged territories, the territories that it claims for itself as an imperialist hegemon, that we have an overall genocidal situation that we're facing here in the US. And so the issue of political prisoners and prisoners of war is right there up at the top of this issue of genocide. That said, we have other counts of genocide that we charged the United States with, and they were found guilty of. So I'm sharing right now, this is the Spirit of Mandela website. Ideally, we're all familiar with this website. If you are not, please hit us up at spiritofmandela.org. We had a relatively recent overhaul of the website, and shouts to the comrades who put this together. And it is really effective and aesthetically strong. So I just want to go over briefly what charges the U.S. was found guilty of in October of 2021. Racist police killing of Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. Hyper-incarceration of Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. Political incarceration of civil rights, national liberation era revolutionaries and activists, as well as present-day activists. Environmental racism and its impact on Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. Public health racism and disparities and its impact on Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. And then, of course, the overarching charge of genocide, which the U.S., again, was found guilty of. With that being said, so if we recognize that the U.S. is guilty of genocides in the plural, which we know that it is, not only with regard to this domestic situation, Black, Brown, and Indigenous people here, but as we see all around us, and was spoken to at the outset, we also recognize that the United States is guilty of genocides the world over. Especially right now, we're clear on and aware of the ongoing genocidal situation in Palestine. That the U.S. is the primary mover with regard to that genocide. So as Brother Ori was saying, we have a very serious situation that we're facing right now, and so we don't have any time to deal with anything beyond the realities that we are confronted with. And that's the sense of urgency that the People's Senate comes out of. And this is precisely why, and you know, in the limited experience that I have out here in the world, and all respect due to our elders that are here and that have been forging the path before us. But with the limited years that I have access to, I'm not aware of a strategy that is more viable with regard to the actual genocidal conditions that we're facing right now here in the domestic colonies of the US than the People's Senate strategy. And part of the reason why I say that is because the focus of the People's Senate is not about putting forward some sort of program that everyone should get behind and just follow the lead of the People's Senate. It's in fact the exact opposite. The People's Senate's focus is on how do we coordinate and build a network wherein all of the tremendous work that all of us that are on this current webinar and our extended networks, our comrades that are not here, but maybe we'll peep this archive, maybe we'll be at the next webinar, the next meeting, etc., that we are all able to acknowledge, recognize, and strengthen the work that we are all doing tirelessly on a day-to-day basis, recognizing that there's no possible way that the U.S., the genocider in chief that is constantly exploiting and gaining resources off of genocide for profit, as was noted in the first We Charge Genocide petition decades back. With that being the case, it's not going to be any one of us, any single organization that is going to topple this genocidal beast that we're confronted with. It's going to take our coordination. It's going to take us knowing who we are. And as has been said, and it's so beautiful to see what we were just seeing and will continue to see in webinars such as this, that it is a family dynamic. we are embracing the reality that our political prisoners, prisoners of war, and the extended families that they all represent are a part of us, and that we are all family. And so as we cultivate and strengthen that familial relation, dealing with this genocidal beast that we're confronted with, the People's Senate asks that you get up with us such that we can see one another, recognize how it is that we're relating to this beast, and use that leverage that was mentioned before that we can solidify through coordinating across the domestic colonies where we exist and the external colonies, and across these various issues of genocide that we are all facing up.
Yeah.
So, and exactly, we are our own liberators, exactly that. And so as Brother Jaleel said very clearly, and as the text reads, and he being one of the co-founders of Spirit of Mandela, out of which the People's Senate emerges, absolutely, we are our own liberators, is the mode that the People's Senate is moving on. And I recognize and know that all of us here gathered move in that way as well. So if we're our own liberators, we need to be able to recognize one another out here in these trenches so that we can get into that work and finalize that work of liberation, recognizing that we are in a hostage situation out here, wherein we can literally see live streamed on active and increasing genocidal activity, whole cloth, right in front of us, and the various different states and governments and nations wherein people of conscience exist, like us, screaming that this has to stop, and are not able to move the needle with regard to these genocidal governments, chiefly among them the United States, this genocidal beast that is funding this open genocide that we're witnessing right now, from here to Gaza and in between.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tag. We appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing with us the important work that the Spirit of Mandela is doing, as well as this People's Senate. I see. So we've gone through all our presenters, and we're gonna kind of open it up for Q&A for next 10 minutes or so. I see Sister Betty has her hand raised. So if you have any questions or comments, do raise your hand. I'll try to call on you, and that way we'll keep a stack. Go ahead, Sister Betty.
I just want to commend first 2 points. I want to commend the Spirit of Mandela's committee, and I want to commend Jericho for the way they have connected the dots of what Cop City represents to this country. It is very, very important that we push this message out to the public. They are sleeping. They don't get it. And I want to commend you for being in the front lines. Within that context, it is even more important that we hold the Democratic Party accountable, because the people doing that stuff in Cop City are not just Republicans. You look at that city council, you look at that mayor, you look at the governors, many of these people are Democrats. I'm not saying we're going to win this battle, but we can win the war to educate and raise the consciousness of our people. And that is what I really love about the Spirit of Mandela's concept of the Senate. And finally, I want to deeply apologize. I'm, getting old, folks, but I said Cam Howard, I meant Khalid Rahim, who's fighting this whole battle in terms of making our people understand that we are captives and we're entitled to remuneration as captives on this continent. And last but not least, I hope we can bring Como Koda, Brother Daoud Andre on board with us, because just as Gaza is facing extinction, Haiti is next, and Niger is next, and Yemen is next. So I think the whole thrust of the Spirit of Mandela initiative will highlight what our brother Tad just said about the genocide agenda of the West. They cannot exist without the resources. Capitalism is a greedy beast and it must always be consuming. And so now they need Africa. They need the resources in the Caribbean. And now is our time to link up and educate the people to do that. And that's what the Senate does. And that's what Jericho has been trying to achieve. Sorry it took so long. And I hope Brother Khalid, will join in. He's been doing a great deal of work.
Thank you, Sister Betty. Mark, I see your hand raised.
Want to ask you, Jorge, and a couple other people who've been around for well over 20 years or longer. We talk about the genocidal beast. The legal terminology of plausible denial in terms of medical neglect. If that is the case, what is preventing the plausible denial, and what is it one ear and out the other metaphor in terms of a genocidal base? Is it the Samson option metaphorically, or is it the David and Goliath option metaphorically? Because it appears to be going on a merry-go-round. We've been writing and writing and writing. I was told as a kid, one ear and out the other, you hard-headed. And it seems to be a pattern with the state relevant to that in the genocidal beast. So what's the option? The Samson option? The David and Goliath option, metaphorically? Or what? You can write to the cow, and some people say you can write to the cows go home. It seems to be they waving your hand at you politely, because it's a pattern of conduct that I've witnessed over the years. Maybe you can have some discernment on this, Mr. Chang.
So I don't ever say I would have all or some of the answers. I might have some of the answers of it. But I think sort of to in terms of the People's Senate, I think the idea is that we recognize that we live in a genocidal society. I think that it's important for us to recognize that we need some levels of change, whether that comes from, so if we wait for our elected officials to create that change, we'll be dead by then, right? So I think it's important that the People's Senate is a tool to link people who are looking for ways to create a new paradigm of relating to one another, of creating space, creating relationships to one another, so that we're not stuck believing that this is the only way that we can survive. Now, what that looks like is really up to us.
Now, how does that deal with the issue of the other tier of the question, medical neglect? It seems to be very ambiguous what medical neglect is, in terms it's in the eye of the beholder on the genocidal base. My thing is, how do you have a paradigm shift if medical neglect is in the eye of the beholder on the genocidal base?
I'll let Ricardo take that one.
First, I just want to acknowledge that question almost feels like, to me, energetically, you're trying to understand how, when what we see are harms, this is an extension of slavery. We're stepping into, I feel like, to do this work, we're stepping into a soul wound of our nation. So in doing so, one of the things I would propose as a concrete way of engaging is to examine relationships of professionals, including the medical profession, because you speak correctly. When you look at standards for medical neglect, to reach the court of law, that has specific criteria and elements which distort, which is the true medical neglect, which is coming away from the ethics of the medical profession to recognize the abuse of what it means to have an elder who has all these multiple conditions and skin conditions to be, a 4-point shackle. And we have to write to the medical director, the nursing director, the administratively, go visit the hospital where Mumia is being held, go and knowing that the security is escorting us out and putting them on alert that we're now going, thank you to Julia's work and the work of the Mumia Health Committee, and some other people have all helped support to say, we're going to the United Nations to let you know that our letter going to them, which is coming from religion and medicine, we need it to be multidisciplinary. And I think that when our communities come to us and say, this is what we're asking the disciplines to do, to come together, because those prisons got built with multidisciplinary cooperation, and we understand that there is a class interest and complicity of professional relationships to communities where they're not in right relationship with defense. And to be able to speak to that from a place that says, from our heart, we're seeking that you come together as professions and speak to the release of our elders as elder abuse, as is legislated, right?
May I interject? At the end of the day, they hold all the cards. Now, when we bring this up, they can fold them or hold them, cross their legs, and say what? So what? So what do we do in that instance? I can say this, I can say that, I can bang, play, boo-hoo-hoo, and say this, that, and the third. But if I got all the cards and whatnot, and I hold all the cards, what do we do then? Brother Ricardo?
Yes, my answer would be that decisions about what we do would be grounded with principles around recognition of who's most vulnerable and seeking guidance of those who are most vulnerable. In the case of Mumia, in the case of Jalil, who can, from inside out, being capable of guiding where it is we engage stress points, but we're looking at it institutionally, engaging public health institutions from a perspective of the medical profession is one potential mechanism. My sense is that it should be multidisciplinary. How we respond to our institution's response to us is something that should be coordinated, but we have rich opportunity to do it, including to use our creative energy, our theater, our art as a way of speaking, not just using the rational voice, because Mumia was, I mean, there's a lot of lessons I'm learning, but one of the things he does is I feel encourages us to speak from our heart and speak from that place, and encourages us all to do it.
Thank you, Ricardo. So
thank both of you. Thank both of you for your discernments.
Thank you. So I just want to, we're running short on time, so I want to, take 2 more questions, and then, obviously for the panel of presenters, feel free to respond, and then we're going to close it out. Okay. So first, we're going to take Khalid.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, if I could quickly respond to the brother's question. Again, I think we need to respond just as the other brother responded, with a multidisciplinary approach. So thank you very much, Brother Alvarez, for making that point. If you look at how things get done in this particular period of time, historically as well, one of our greatest assets and our greatest tools is our ability to organize and to mobilize. So we have to organize and we have to mobilize, but we have to organize and mobilize in some very specific ways. Brother Alvarez, you made mention of the use of the arts, media, so forth and so on. I agree with you 100%. But one of the tools that is underutilized is our power to vote. And I'm not saying that we vote in a vacuum, and I'm certainly not saying that we vote for any one of the 2 imperialistic, warmongering political parties. But we have to start somewhere with developing our own independent and radical political formations that we can use when it comes to exercising one of our greatest resources, that we as radicals and revolutionaries have historically underutilized, mostly for ideological reasons, oftentimes because of our misunderstanding of how that particular tool could move us forward in terms of our liberation. I'll be very blunt. There are other political prisoners in prisons of war from formations that we ourselves had aligned ourselves with over 50 plus years ago. Whether we talk about the Bader-Meinhof, so-called Bader-Meinhof gang from out of Germany back in the day, or whether we talk about some of the revolutionaries and activists from the Quebec liberation movement back in the day. And I'm just mentioning those two. But their people did not stay in prison for over 50 years. And one of the reasons their people did not stay in prison for over 50 years is because they were able to eventually transition their revolutionary politics into some type of political movement and power that would push the system to release their prisoners. We never did that. We never did it formally. Even if you look at the histories of the national liberation movements and the anti-colonial movements that many of us were part of, that we had aligned ourselves with from the 60s and 70s, at some point they developed a very strong political component. And when I say a strong political component, a component that was involved with electoral politics. Whether we talk about the Irish Republican Army and their political wing, whether we talk about the struggles in places like Zimbabwe and South Africa and a whole bunch of other spots where they made that transition. We failed to make that transition. We got stuck. And because we got stuck, we've been walking in circles for the last several decades. So we have a tremendous amount of power that is underutilized. And it's the type of power that can further help us to educate the masses of people to get behind our political prisoners, right? We have not done that. And so that's really on us. We have to be more creative and be more open and recognize we got a whole bunch of tools in the toolbox that we just haven't used yet.
Brother Jorge, can I respond to that?
Sure, but briefly, please.
Very briefly, it may seem very strange to people to wonder, why would J. Edgar Hoover have written anything about Nebraska Black Panther Party members? It was specifically because Mondo, who was then called David Rice, and Ed Poindexter became delegates to the Democratic Party. They were going to the Democratic Party convention. They had got themselves into wars, elected, and going to the convention. And that's exactly what he feared. And he said they're a problem, and that's why. So I agree with this brother 100%.
Thank you, Sister Tekla. All right, we're going to get to our last question or comment from Julia, and then we're going to close out, all right? Go ahead, Julia.
Oh, very briefly, I really thank you all. This was beautiful. I hope we do this again, because in order to support our family, we need to support ourselves and meet together. I just wanted to say I don't have many answers either, but what I sense that the system lacks, and that we are very rich. We are very rich. We have the ability to love, and I'm not ashamed to speak of it, just as Che Guevara said, at the expense of seeming ridiculous, a real revolutionary has feelings of love. But if you stand in front of the police and you tell them about love, they will say that is Greek to us, and they will kill us. They do not understand love. We understand it. The second wealth we have, and they do not have, is the love of our ancestors, and that our ancestors are always with us, and they walk at our side, and they give us their wisdom, and they are us, and we are them. So they I have immense pity for our opponents. And I know we will win because we are very, very rich.
Thank you, Julia. We really appreciate those closing words. I want to thank all the panelists who were able to share their accounts of our political prisoners as well as their own accounts of their struggles fighting the state. And so I just want us all to remember that, we want to continue to support our veterans, and support our political prisoners. We want to hold their names and remember their names, even if they're no longer with us here today. But we do want to get the ones that we do have still with us to embrace them, to cherish them, and for those who are still behind the wall, we need to get them out as soon as possible. So, so what's the call?
Free
Free them all.
Free 'em
Free 'em
all.
all.
Free 'em all. Free
The land. Thank you,
Free the
everyone.
land, love not fear.
Free 'em all.
And we hope to see everyone soon enough.
Well,
All right.
we will
Thank
be
you
doing
all.
this again, folk. Not to worry.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Tag, for doing all the technical stuff.
Absolutely.
On the move, Tag.
On the move.
On the move. Free them all. On the move.
Free
On
them
the
all.
move.
Hey.
All right.
On the move from Jericho Move.